All right, everybody, let's get started. Here we go. So I know all of you guys have been implementing the pace rapport builder that we've talked about. I was going to do a different training, but I'm going to save that. I am reading a book right now, and it um, made it clear about something for me. So as you sit here and listen, it's going to begin to make sense, and you're going to see exactly what I'm telling you. Whether you pay attention, your subconscious is paying attention, and is going to categorize this so that you guys will be able to leverage and use this in the future. I was reading this book, and it was talking about emotional states, and I think I kind of knew what emotional state I wanted my customer to be in, but I've analyzed, I don't know, probably about 20 or 25 different closes inside of ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT, what emotional state does someone have to be in for me to be able to close them? So it's very good data, very good feedback, because now I can analyze this and I can categorize this, and I can see what exact state they're going to be in. And a lot of times when we show up to someone's house, whether we're at the door, especially when the door, but even when in the couch, what emotional state are they typically in at that point? It's a
Curious.
question. Huh?
Curious.
Curious. Okay. That's a good emotional state to be in. So what if we're knocking on their door? What emotional state are they in?
Angry, anxious,
Is
pissed
it
off, depressed,
okay?
broke.
All right. Yeah,
Maybe some confusion.
maybe some confusion. Yes, some confusion in there. Any other emotional states that the customer's in when we're knocking on their door?
Curious.
Curious. Well, this is an ideal state for them to be in at the door. We want them to be curious. If we can give them a hook and then get them interested, this is the
In a hurry.
gap from where they're at, the emotional state into a new emotional state that we're going to create by pacing them, and then by the tactics and skills and the stuff that we learned on linguistic model. But most of the time when you're knocking doors, people are just in like irritated mood. They're in an impatient mood. They don't want you to waste their time. And so typically they're going to be like, hey, dude, what do you want? Get out of here. Like, I'm not interested. I'm not buying anything. This is the emotional state that they would be in. It was some sort of irritation, impatient attitude. I would consider most people in that sort of state. There's not a lot of people that as soon as they open the door, like, hi, how are you? That's what they're going to say to you. And they've got the big smile on their face. They're mostly irritated. And so there's a gap that we have to bridge. And a lot of times, too, even if we're going into consultations, there's an emotional state that people are typically in. Usually it's going to be closed off, not going to be very open, unless they have a tremendous amount of pain or you've done a really good set. They might be in an emotional state that would be absolutely curious and willing to listen to this out because they're looking for a solution. But for the most time, I would say like 80% of the time, people are in a closed off emotional state, and they're in a more of a fear state. And even if they answer the door and they're in an irritated state, it's more of a fear state. So even if someone's irritated, if we get to the baseline of this, if we go to the baseline and we're like discover, we pull off the irritation, we pull off the anger, we pull off like all of the other things. At the end of this, it's going to be some sort of a fear state, and their fear that you're going to waste their time, fear that they're going to miss out on their TV show, fear they're going to miss out on their dinner, fear that there's some sort of fear. So we want to bridge that gap, that emotional state from where they're currently at. And then what we want to do is bring them into the ideal emotional state. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, analyze all of my sets and all of my closes, and what emotional state is ideal for my customers to be in. And so it analyzed all of this stuff. It categorically has kept track of that and it doesn't forget. And it said the primary buying emotional state is empowered relief and future paced security. So when I'm at the door or I'm in the house, I'm always going to be talking about the future pain. And so I want people to take action to avoid that future pain. This is a state where they feel safe from the future pain, rate hikes, blackouts, unpredictability, smart and responsible. So I want them feeling like they're making a wise move, right? I want to make them feel like they're making a good decision at this point. I want them to feel like they're in control. People want control. They want something. Control and certainty is synonymous, so they go hand in hand. So not being sold, but choosing to protect their family and their finances. I like to assume that at the end of any one of my sales, that people feel like they didn't get pushed into this, but they made a correct decision to protect them and their family and their future legacy. And I want to feel like they're validated. So this is why there's a very precise way that we answer all objections. Seen people like them win this and they feel seen and understood. This is why storytelling is very, very good inside of telling, answering objections. So, yes, absolutely. A lot of people have felt like this and what they found. And so, if you can name their emotional state, name the objection and how they're feeling about that objection, then you have much more control. And validated means you have some sort of empathy and a little urgency, but not pressure. So, I will apply pressure if I have to, but what I like to do is create the framework that they have to do this or else there's the consequences of doing this. Here's the consequences of you making a decision to do this. There's going to be, savings, control, quality of life, certainty. And here's the consequences if you don't do this. Is going to be you're going to continue to stay with the same utility company. You're not going to have any control. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's a worse quality of life, all of the other things. And so if we can set the right framework at the door and at the kitchen table, people won't feel pressure. They're going to feel like they came to this conclusion themselves. And we want everybody to kind of lead along those breadcrumb trails. Listen, I believe if somebody, if everybody kind of knew what we knew, I think that everybody would do this. I mean, you have a cheaper power source, you have a battery source, you're energy independent. Like the benefits just go, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And that unflinching, unreasonable conviction and certainty in myself that this is a good deal lets me be able to convey that to the customers. So now I'm gonna talk about this a little bit, and then I'm gonna go how we can consistently lead them there. But I was thinking about this morning when I was planning on doing this training, and I was like, okay, this is a great emotional state for the customer to be in, but what emotional state does the rep have to be in, which is far more superior in context for you to be in this emotional state than the customer? Because if you are in an uncertain state, how would you ever be able to get the customer into a certain state? How would that be possible? Like it's not even possible. You can't lead somebody unless you're in that emotional state yourself. So, what if you guys had to name it? What would be that emotional state that you would need to be in so that you could help these customers make good, accurate decisions?
Absolute
Absolute confidence.
certainty.
Absolute what?
Certainty.
Certainty. That's good. And then Yoel, all right,
Yes,
Jordan, I think you said confidence,
yes, sir.
right? Anybody else? No other participation?
You got to be in whatever state you want them to be in.
So you just a chameleon, so you're just whatever emotional state. And what's the emotional state that we want them to be in?
A bind state.
What's a buying state? That's very vague.
Curiosity.
You could generalize the shit out of that. What
Power
would be
and relief.
power of relief? Yes, very good. So they got to feel like they're getting some sort of relief. What else?
They got to be open.
What's that, Will?
They have to be open to it.
Okay, open, some sort of curious, like curious hook, right?
Anything resourceful.
Anything resourceful. We don't want them. We want them to be. This is why the ideal customer, there's meta models out there. We want them to be towards, not away from. Although we can actually leverage away from people. I'll get into a later meta model training with you guys, but very important aspect of a client if you're thinking about your ideal client. I want to go back to Miles though. Miles, you said they want them to be in a buying state. Well, what is that exactly? That's a generalization. What do you think a buying state is, Miles?
A bind state is already kind of bought in. Like if you're in the home and they believe it's
Using the same language, buying state, bought in. Like, what does that mean, though? So if I'm thinking
excited,
of buying state,
like
excited,
I said earlier, yeah, certainty.
Okay.
They like have some type of belief that it's gonna work, that it's right for them.
okay. If we just go back into the context of the analyzing of all of my closes, every single customer was an empowered empowered a certain state, right? And then also not only that, but the future paced relief. And so we want them thinking about the future and being aware and emotionally anchor them into who they are as a person. So future paced security and then empowered relief. So this is empowered relief or certainty. We want them being in a state feeling like they dodged a bullet or they're making a good decision. But the state that we all have to be in, and what I've noticed with myself, and I've listened to a couple of my closes, is that typically I'm in a grounded, certain state and I have calm authority. So calm authority means I'm not exerting this. I'm telling them facts and figures, and I'm leveraging and using kind of like my tonality, my body language, and I'm going to be using some of my linguistics and future pacing them with stories of what happens if they don't do this. So we want consequences if they do, consequences if they don't. But at the end of the day, this is really going to require you guys all to be in that emotional state. And I'm going to be honest with you this week, dude, I have not been in that emotional state. I went knocking on doors on Tuesday. Dude, I was all over the place. I was making a bunch of mistakes. Made a bunch of mistakes yesterday when I was knocking doors. I said a couple consultations, but like I was not in that calm, grounded, certain state. I did not have the authoritative state. This is the state that we could all practice to be in. And by the way, if you can't think of like, oh, well, what does that state look like? Ask yourself somebody else that might have those particular characteristics, and then just ask yourself, how would they act? How would they be? How would they talk? And then immediately you'll find the solution to the answer. So I'm going to kind of go into this. The first thing is, and then we're going to go into the second part. So the certainty, deep inner conviction. So I am absolutely 100% convicted that everybody should do this. I believe that this is ecological. It's good for everybody, even if they're paying a little bit more. I believe this is much better for them than the alternative, which is to stay with the big, nasty, dirty utility company. So I'm not trying to close them. I already know solar is a smart move. I'm simply guiding them there. So I don't consider myself a sales guy, and I'll tell the customer this, hey, I'm not selling you anything. I'm going to educate you today. This is an educational process, and I'm going to walk you through some of the reasons why you might want to consider this. So I believe in the program more than they believe in their objections. You can't give me an objection that I believe in. Like nobody can give me an objection. There's conditions that are obviously conditions, but an objection is just kind of bullshit. I'm never going to buy someone's objection. Like they don't have an objection good enough that would supersede my conviction of them making a decision to do this. I already know this makes sense. Now I'm helping them feel it too. So your conviction, and what is sales? Like, what's the definition of sales? Anybody here?
Believe.
What is it? There's a saying that goes with it.
Transfer energy.
Transfer of energy.
Transfer of energy. There we go. So it's a transfer of enthusiasm or passion to make a decision, right? So it's just a transfer. You can't transfer what you don't have. And so this is a lot of things, a lot of problem with new guys is that new guys, they don't have the conviction. They're just going through the motions. And sometimes even when we're still here, we can get some doubt. Maybe we have a cancel, and then all of a sudden that doubt seeps in, and that's our transfer. So rather than transfer a certainty or calm authority, we're transferring ambiguity, and we're also transferring like doubt. And so it's very important that we make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and that you're completely bought in. You have to be completely bought in. And so that means like filtering all of the other stuff, distorting and deleting some of the stuff that doesn't align with where you want to be and where you want to go. So like maybe you talk to a customer and you go knock on a door, a solar customer, to try to get a story, and they had a bad experience. It's all a matter of perception. I think if you absolutely looked at it, they're still in a better place, even if they think that they're not. And so it's up to us to delete and distort some of that and say, okay, hey, so you said you have a bad experience, but at the end of the day, it's about your perception and how you're viewing this that's going to be the transfer of energy to the customer. And I guarantee that anybody on this call today, when you know that when you blew a close or you didn't make a close, or maybe you're at a door and you almost had it, but you didn't have it, if you analyze yourself and you look back at what state were you in? Were you in a calm, authoritative state? Were you in a grounded, certain state, or what state were you in? And I guarantee, if I look back at my own, if I look back at my own times I didn't close deals, The customer usually had more certainty than me. The customer had more authority than me, and the customer gave me an objection that I didn't overcome because I bought their objections rather than buying what I noticed to be true. So calm. The other thing is this is like sometimes I've got to really check
Okay.
myself to not get a little bit too excited, because sometimes I get really excited about this opportunity, and there's some people that I can actually have a little bit higher energy with, but the energy has to be stable, unshaken by resistance. So somebody throws out an objection. One of the things I used to do is I used to automatically react and be like, no, 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 but this, it looks like this. And now I start probing and asking questions, and I agree. I absolutely agree. Absolutely. I understand that 100%. And this is what we found with other people that ran into these things. And so now you're speaking with purpose, and you're speaking very slow. This signals control and transmit emotional safety to the customer. If someone gives you an objection and you get all excited about overcoming the objection, what do you think that's going to convey to them? Like, what do you think they're going to think about?
Yeah, these guys trying to sell me something.
That's right. That's right. This guy's trying to sell me some shit, and he doesn't believe in what he's saying because he's getting all excited about this. So this isn't going to work. So, like, the idea behind this is that calm certainty will always allow the customer to get a little bit closer. And the other thing with certainty too is you'd be willing to walk away. You can't be desperate in a position where you're like, okay, okay, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, I'll give you all this stuff. If you're in that position, that's going to exude, and you're going to give that to the client as well. So we want to make sure that we have calm, very, very calm energy. You're not getting excited when someone throws an objection out there. You answer the objection. If I look back on the past, on my deals I sold last week, every one of these people had objections, and I just listened to them, which is very challenging for me to do, to actually sit there and listen to it, because I know this kind of bullshit. Listen to them, agree with them, and then say what I found. What I found is that people like that had those same experiences, and that people, and what we have found is this, and what they find out is that this outweighs any of those consequences that they have, or whatever the way that you overcome the objection, right? Speak low and slow with purpose. This is about tonality, and how are you conveying that? So this is absolutely about tonality. If you're like, hey, well, can you go grab your utility bill? Hey, I know that they had a bad experience, but if it's all about the tonality and leveraging the tonality to be an absolute professional. Low and slow with purpose is going to signal that the emotional safety to the customer, like every single time. It's low and slow, not incredibly slow. I know Jordan would be incredibly.
Here we go.
Oh, can't do this. Just give you a hard time, bro. I'm gonna bust your chops till you change. But the idea is you want to just make sure that your tonality is matching so that they feel emotional safety. If you're getting all excited and your tone starts to go up and your body and your physiology starts to change, immediately customers will pick up on that. Calm equals control. Customers mirror and pace your state. So we talked a lot about pacing the customer, and I was going to launch into leading the customer today, but I think this needs to be addressed first before we can lead these customers. So it's about getting into their psychology, getting into their physiology, matching their state, and then immediately leading them out of it. And so if you're going to be leading anybody out of it, what state do we, this is why we addressed what state they want. And I hope all you guys wrote this shit down. I'm going to go over this one more time to what state the customer has to be in. Empowered relief, and future pace security. So this is the state that we want them to be in, and we have to know that we can bring them to this state. We have to be in this state ourselves, understanding and realizing that we're bringing these customers on to this level of thinking. So, leadership vibe. So nobody's going to let you lead unless you pose yourself as a leader. Well, how do you do that? I'm telling you, you're not selling, you're leading them out of uncertainty. So we're leading them from their state, which is not a good state, to an emotional state where they have certainty. If you guys were to have uncertainty and you found somebody, a leader that was going to bring you to a certain state, you guys would align with them, because nobody wants to live in uncertainty. Nobody, not a single person out there wants to live with some uncertainty. That brings us a lot of pain, and we future pace on what could happen when we have uncertainty. Now, when we have certainty, it brings us to a much higher state, a much more peaceful state, a peace of mind state, a predictable state, a certain state. It's a much better state for them to be in. And so it's up to us to be able to lead them into that position. You know the path, they don't. So walk like a guide who's done it 10,000 times. Even if you're brand new and you haven't done this before, just take a play out of somebody else's book that's done this 10,000 times and believes in this, and ask yourself what would they do in this moment. So internal mantra for reps. I'm going to give you guys something that's really that's really effective. Something I do. I said they're lucky to have this conversation with me. If I let them sit in indecision, I've failed as a leader. I'm here to make them help them move forward toward freedom. So whatever it is that your mantra, sometimes I'm the greatest salesman in the world, whatever it is that you have to do to change that internal state. And by the way, you can fix your internal state by changing your physiology. We've been talking about this a lot. So what do we do for our physiology? Our shoulders back, our heads up, we're breathing deep, our palms are out. We're just acting like that we have confidence, whether or not you have confidence. And I understand that a lot of times when you're brand new, you don't have that certainty, that confidence. But guess what? You can change your physiology, and your brain will still start to immediately follow whatever your physical being's going to do. So, one of the things that I go into is like, hey, I'm here to help these people. I'm here to help these people. These people need me more than I need them. These people need me more than I need them. This is something that I carry with me. That's exactly why I'm here. This is exactly why I'm here. You're not alone. We've helped thousands just like you, all without flinching or speeding up. Teach them to breathe before speaking. So, like, I want to teach you guys before you respond, and this is going to be hard for some of you guys. Jeremy's probably not on here, but I guarantee Jeremy does not breathe before he answers. Like, I just guarantee you, because he just immediately bursts it out. Now, what we can do is you can pause. There's that moment in time where you're making a decision. A lot of us, myself included, just automatically respond to stuff without thinking about what I'm going to say before I say it. And what I noticed yesterday when I was knocking doors, at first I was just trying to keep the transition going and keep them engaged. But what I found is that when I slowed down my speech and I paused, like, I had much more traction inside of the context of making an appointment. So now let's skip back up. So do you all understand the emotional state that you want to anchor yourself to? Do you understand this?
Yes.
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 Is there
Yes.
anybody that has any questions on what emotional state you're going to be in or how to get there? Don't be scared to ask questions. This is what this training is for. Nobody. Okay. You sure? Okay. So I'm going to go into how to get the customer into that emotional state. The first anchor here is going to be us to be in the emotional state we want the customer to be in, right? So cool, confidence, certain relief, absolute certainty. You're going to have to be able to future pace yourself. Here's the other thing. Dude, you're being an asshole. And I tell you guys this all the time. You're being an asshole if you let the customer off the hook. To let the customer continue to spend money with the utility company when we have a solution for them. Like, if you think you're being a nice guy by not pushing the envelope or getting them to slam the door on you, you're like being an asshole, dude. So I want to let you guys know. So you're really being an asshole if you let the customer off the hook without making the point very clear and be able to try to effectively communicate what our position is. Our position is to help these people. And so sometimes I feel like sometimes guys are really nice. Is Logan on the call right now? Where's Logan at?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, so let me and Logan, I'm going to pick on you. Is that okay? If I do that for a little bit?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so Logan is an incredibly nice guy. Okay, have a conversation with him. And so sometimes we get the idea, we have the perception that we don't want to make people mad or angry. We want to be incredibly nice. If someone says no, we're going to say, okay, we're just going to kind of walk away. But let me tell you, in this context of what we're trying to do for people, this would be like you letting somebody go into a burning fire and burn to death. Logan, would you ever let somebody go into a fire and burn to death?
Not a chance. No.
So what if they didn't like, what if you were to piss them off, if you were to just like be very persistent on not letting go in there, would you still be persistent?
I'd respectfully pin them to the ground.
Okay. So we want you to metaphorically pin the customer to the ground. Does that make sense? We don't
Yes.
want you to be, if you think you're being a nice guy by them saying, oh, no, I'm not interested, you saying, okay, yeah, I understand, and you walking away, or if they give you some bullshit objection and you're buying that, what I want you to look at this, and maybe the context, maybe you could easily imagine this, maybe you can't, but I want you to easily imagine yourself, you're letting them go into a burning house, right? You're letting them go into a fire and get burned up. At least their finances are going to be burned up partially, right? They're going to get, whether or not they die, they're going to get burned up. They're going to come away with some scars. I don't know if you could easily imagine yourself in that context when you are trying to be what we call a nice guy and let people off the hook. Like that's what you're doing. You're letting them go into the fire. And so you had just told me that you will respectfully pin them to the ground. I want you to feel like that is the context of what you need to do the next time somebody gives you some bullshit objection and you're feeling like, okay, well, I don't want to push too much, or I don't want to pry. I don't want to feel like I'm being an asshole, because the fact is that if you let someone go into a fire, are you an asshole for pinning them, or are you an asshole for letting them go into a fire? Which one?
For letting them go into the fire.
Okay. So what we have to do, we have to view it as we're letting these people go into a fire versus pinning them on the ground. And I'll tell you what right now, if everybody can view this as that, you stop buying these bullshit objections and you stop letting people go into the fire. But instead, we're going to effectively communicate to help these people transition and at least hear what we have to say. Now, here's the thing. If they slam the door on you, it is what it is. So, like, you don't have to worry about that. Some people want to hurt themselves. Some people, they're not listening. They don't understand. They're not open. They hear what you're saying, but they're not listening internally to what we have to say because they don't believe us. But I guarantee, Dakota, if you knew somebody was going into a fire, they felt like they were just going into a house, but you knew there was a fire, how much more urgency would you have? How much more assumption would you have that these people don't want to go into a fire? Nobody wants to go into a fire and get burned. So if everybody can kind of take that aspect and know that, and look at it in the context of you're letting them go and hurt themselves, and I believe they're hurting themselves by having this massive leak in the finances that's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, especially over periods of time, versus coming around to our solution. So in the context of being a nice guy, you're actually being a jerk. Like you're letting these guys go into a fire. You're a narcissist at this point. Like
just Uno reversed me.
And this doesn't just go for Logan. This applies to everybody here, myself included. You're letting them go into a fire. So I'm going to kind of give you the framework on how to lead them from where they're at, which is usually some sort of if they're slamming the door, irritated, or in this other state. We already discussed. We already came to the conclusion that they are in a what state? Not an angry state, but what state are they in?
Fearful.
That's right. Good job, Jesse. They're in a fearful state. What we want to lead them to is an empowered relief and future-paced security. Now, we want to leverage that fear. I'm going to be honest with you guys. So what we want to do is we want to leverage and anchor future pain. All of my sales, while I'm at the door, while I'm at the kitchen table, I want to leverage, I'm beginning to anchor the future pain, utility bills, inflation, power loss, to create unease. I want to create some unease there. Then immediately offer relief through the solar solution. So this is why we always talk about the problem first, because we can't just lead with the solution. If you lead with the solution, they have absolutely no pain and no motivation to move out of that fearful state into a certain state. So what we want to do after we display the problem, this is why we come to the door. Most of you guys are usually, I would say 90% of you guys are talking about what's happening with the utility bill. I'm assuming that everybody does that. Hey, did you guys get the insert? Did you guys see what's happening? Have you noticed something on your bill? So inevitably, did you guys throw the insert away like everyone else? So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to do that. So we want to create the problem, and then we offer immediately relief. Hey, let me tell you, I'm just educating you real fast today, telling you what's happening. So there was an Inflation Reduction Act. Inside of there was a domestic content bill. The U.S. government's going to be subsidizing 55% of your system. We've never seen this before. We're never going to see this again. There's an expiration date on this. What we want to do is run an entity report to see if we can work together. I can't work with you if I can't save you 30%, and I can't work with you if there's any out-of-pocket expense for you. But I promise what most customers tell me is this looks too good to be true, but I'm going to explain mathematically why this is possible. So go grab the utility bill so we can run this report so I can show you how we can get you out of these rising utility costs and shore up the leak in your finances and show you just kind of a better option, a better opportunity to buy your entity for, sometimes 20, 30, 40, 50% less. So in that context, that immediately, if we can display and the customer will actually listen to us about the problem, they're going to immediately be in some sort of a fearful or painful state. And now what we do is we lead them out of it. This is where you become a leader, because now you're going to lead them from where they're at into where the emotional state that we want them through. So I'm always going to tell you guys to use storytelling to show people winning. It's going to trigger emotional alignment. What a story is always going to do is put the customer in the lead character's shoes and imagine what this is like. This is next level. You can certainly do embedded commands with a story, which I typically do. But the same thing, this is why we love objections. I love objections because I'm like, yeah, hey, let me tell you, I had a customer just like you. I had a guy yesterday, I couldn't make any headway with him, but he's like, yeah, I'm an engineer and blah, 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 and I blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, hey, yeah, you know what we found that engineers just like yourself, once they looked at the numbers, they understood that it was just a simple mathematical equation. This wasn't trigonometry, but simply it was like going from here to here. And so they understood that now they want to be able to lock this down so they have absolute certainty in the foreseeable future. They have a better quality of life and they save tens of thousands of dollars. And engineers typically love this because I know you guys love your spreadsheets, graphs, and maps. This isn't a very big spreadsheet because it's a simple subtraction compared to where you're at to where you're at today. And so what we found is this, and I know that was a little bit of a story, but what I did is I bandwagoned. I understood he's an engineer. He identifies as an engineer. He's going to identify with other engineers. And I said what we found. This is a really good technique to launch into a story or launch into a way that's going to have the customer identify with the bandwagon close. So this is a really good way. The other thing, you guys have all heard my story about my own personal story about, putting my AC at 79 degrees and 89 degrees. Like this gets everybody emotionally engaged and they can imagine themselves being in my shoe, whether they're in my shoes or not. They can put themselves in the context, and this makes me a real person. So this makes me an actual person. Now, I'm not telling you guys all to tell your story in first person. You can certainly tell my story in second person. Listen, we had a client that used to put his thermostat at 79 in the upstairs. He'd bump up to 89 for 6 hours a day. And at 8 o'clock, he turned the thermostat upstairs down to 79, but he had to shift his kid's bedtime. He was absolutely miserable. It was hell on earth here. He did that for 3 years, all the way up until the utility company got sued. Finally, the solar came out. He got solar. Now I just talked to him. He's putting his house at 72 degrees. He lives his life of one of comfort. I don't know if you can identify with that. I don't know what temperature you're putting the thermostat at, but how would it feel to be able to put that thermostat at whatever temperature you want and not have to pay a penalty for being able to do that? How would that make you feel? Do you see how that story would have put them identifying with the character of the story, walk them through something, walk them through the strategically suffering? And I'll tell you what, 95% of Arizonans strategically use their energy. I don't care the income level. The majority of people that are living here in Arizona are going to do this. This is always going to resonate. We can also talk about other stories like, hey, maybe their big concern is my roof. Hey, yeah, so your big concern is your roof and us making holes on the roof. Is that what I hear you saying? Yes, absolutely. Okay, let me tell you what a lot of other clients have felt. In fact, I had a client just like you that just spent $25,000 on a roof that didn't want us to do this because his big concern was us affecting his massive investment that he did. So once we showed him in writing that we give him a 25-year warranty, and once we showed him by research data that says that his roof is more protected where we put the solar panels than if he didn't, he finally came to the conclusion that this was a good deal and that the savings, the certainty, and the quality of life outweighed his concerns with the roof. And plus, because we gave him all of the peace of mind, knowing that his roof is protected for 25 years, he was able to easily and effortlessly make this decision. Would that be a good way to answer a roof objection? I don't know. Would that be a good way?
Yes, because it would help the homeowner with like visualizing it as well and getting them emotionally bought in.
Well, they're validated. They're going to be validated. So storytelling is a very important part of the process. I don't know how many of you guys are doing it. Everybody should be doing it. Dude, you have stories. Even if you don't have a sale, you have stories about customers on the street. These are anecdotes. Even better, this is why I stop at solar houses and I figure out what their story is. Yesterday, I stopped at Jeff and Susan's house, had solar for 2 years. These guys were the biggest laydown on the planet. Whoever knocked on their door had the biggest laydown they've ever had. The husband wanted it forever. They're super happy with their solar. They're super excited. They're saving a ton of money. They're like really, really excited about this. The husband always wanted solar. This is a great story to leverage and use. Like you can leverage and use this. They went solar because of this. And then you want to figure out why they went solar. Why did you make a decision to go solar? What was the whole context and the meaning behind you making a decision to do this? So one of the other things that you want to do is you want to offer certainty through logic, showing numbers, overproduction warranties, or just talking about simple logical explanations. Listen, this is going to look too good to be true, but if you look at the math, we're not asking you to bust out the scientific calculator. This is a simple subtraction model. So here's your current bill, and here's your new bill. All you're doing is going from here. Watch their eyes. All you're going from here is all the way down here, and you're making up for that gap. This is a simple logical explanation. This is logical. This is not emotional. We want people bought in emotionally, but the logic is going to identify them with absolute certainty. And I'm not going to ask them to trust me now. I will ask them to trust the math. I never ask people to trust me now, but I do ask them to trust the math. And the math is going to look just like this. Going from here all the way down here. And I'm going to do it with my fingers. And I'm going to watch their eyes go up. I'm going to watch their eyes go down. And immediately the logic takes place. They have certainty. They don't think they're going to have to do all these research and all these other things because it's a simple subtraction model, right? So then I want to bring identity-based frames. I want to say, like, you're the kind of person that probably doesn't wait until it's too late, right? Are you the type of person that typically jumps out ahead of things before you're forced to make a decision, or do you wait until you're forced to make a decision? 9 times out of 10, people are gonna like, yeah, I make a decision before I'm forced to. I'm like, that's exactly the type of person that we like to work with, because you're going to recognize the more I talk, the more you're going to recognize that this is good for you and this protects you from the rising inflation, and you're jumping out ahead before this goes away. So some of the things that you want to always identify, this is why it's very important that we tell the customer who they are, and then we put that in alignment with where they're at. So do you guys kind of understand the stuff that we're putting? I think I gave you just enough information to be able to implement and put this in here. I know it's like kind of a step-by-step process, and I jumped around a little bit, but just for context though, do you guys think this makes sense, or do you think I'm full of shit?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Do you
Makes
think
perfect.
do you think this would be easy to implement and just kind of understand? I know consciously there's probably a lot of information. This is why I'm really relying on your subconscious, which is categorizing all of these things and remembering all these things and filing these things away, so that I would rather have your unconscious programs understand and know this to be fact and true and be able to implement this, because I'm not relying on your conscious awareness to be able to remember all of these trainings. What I'm relying on is your unconscious competence to be able to take this and be able to implement this here in the future. So the first and foremost thing is, inside this training, people are always going to be in a different emotional state. We want to bridge that gap, and we want to put them into an emotional state of where we want them to go. This would be leading them out, right? Implementing some of these other things. And by the way, you don't have to be able to pace these guys or remember all of the other stuff that we talked about in the last three trainings. You can always be able to pace these people. You can also be able to lead these people by just implementing some of these simple things. Talking about the future pacing them, smart and responsible, making a good decision, in control, validated, a little urgency. Like all of these things will be able to lead you closer to you making a sell and then helping these customers out. I was talking about, this isn't just something I say. I'm legit when I say, like, we serve the customer at the highest level because we take them into an undesirable emotional state, and we put them into an emotional state of confidence, certainty, peace of mind, better quality of life, all of the other things, all of the other benefits and stuff that they have. So, do you guys have any questions on what we just talked about? Everybody's good. All right. That's it. Love you guys.
Peace out.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Take it easy, Luke.
Thank you.